So in Chapter 5, we're going to discuss infection control principles and practices. Excuse me. So you are a new employee of a salon that offers hair and nail services, and at the end of the day, the salon manager asks you to clean and disinfect the counters, the workstation tools, implements, and pedicure equipment. Your manager also tells you to enter the cleaning and disinfection into the salon's logbook. You know how important it is to follow the proper cleaning and disinfection procedures in the salon. So the term clean is defined as being a mechanical process, which means scrubbing, using soap and water, detergent and water to remove all visible dirt, debris, and many disease-causing germs. The term sanitizing is defined as a chemical process for reducing the number of disease-causing germs on clean surfaces to a safe level. And the term disinfection is a chemical process that uses specific products to destroy harmful organisms on an environmental surface. So every state has their regulations for the practice of cosmetology, and they are responsible for regulating licensing, enforcement, and your conduct in a salon. So OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and it is a federal agency. And this regulates and enforces standards for the workplace as far as safety and health. And again, this was established in 1970, which requires chemical manufacturers and importers to assess and communicate the potential hazards associated with their product. And sorry, let me regress a little bit. That's the Occupational Safety and Health Act. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration was created as part of the U.S. Department of Labor to regulate and enforce safety and health standards in the workplace. So, safety data sheets, known as SDSs. The Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 established the Hazard Communication Standard, which requires chemical manufacturers and importers that they assess potential hazards associated with their products. The Material Safety Data Sheet, the MSDS, was a result of the HCS, which is the Hazard Communication Standard. We now refer to them as SDSs because we'll be doing some research to where you're going to look up some SDSs for some products. So in 2012, along with representatives from most nations who participate in the United Nations, OSHA agreed to comply with the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. This initiative was designed to create label standards to be used around the globe and include the use of specific pictograms to indicate possible safety concerns, as well as adoption of a 16-category standard format, SDS, which again stands for Safety Data Sheet, and again this replaced MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet. So the 16 categories include a product identifier, a hazard identifier, composition information on ingredients, first aid measures, firefighting measures, accidental release measures, handling and storage, and exposure controls and personal protection. So the product identifier is going to come along with contact information for the manufacturer or distributor, including an emergency phone number, and this is recommended use of product and restrictions on use, such as don't use near open flame, do not mix with ammonia. For some reason, people like to mix things with ammonia. Hazard identification. This is all the hazards of the chemical. Composition, information on ingredients includes information on chemical ingredients. First aid measures. Should it get in the eye? Should it be inhaled? Should it be ingested? What first aid measures do you need to take? Firefighting measures. Should it be treated with a dry extinguisher? Don't put water on it. How to extinguish a fire. Accidental release, it lists emergency procedures, protective equipment. proper methods of containment and cleanup. And handling and storage. List precautions for safe handling and storage, including incompatibilities, exposure controls, personal protection. It lists OSHA's permissible exposure limits and personal protective equipment known as PPE. So physical and chemical properties. This is going to list the chemical's characteristics. Stability and reactivity. List the chemical stability and possibility of hazardous reactions. For example, don't store in temperatures over X amount degrees. Toxicology information includes routes of exposure, related symptoms, acute and chronic effects. Ecological information includes effects on wastewater and environment, and disposable consideration includes proper disposal and disposal restrictions, transport restrictions. Regulatory information lists agencies that are responsible for the regulation of the product, and revision dates list original date of document and any revisions. So the EPA, this is the Environmental Protection Agency. They register all types of disinfectants sold and used in the U.S. These are chemicals that destroy most bacteria, including spores, fungi, and viruses on surfaces. The two types that are used in salons are hospital disinfectants and tuberculocidal disinfectants. I just said it. Tuberculocidal meaning tuberculosis. So there are two types used again in salons. We have hospital disinfectants and then we have tuberculocidal. So again, these are EPA registered disinfectants, and they'll say so on the label. So the hospital disinfectants are effective enough to be used in a hospital setting, and they're effective for cleaning blood and body fluids, and they can be used on non-porous surfaces. Disinfectants control the spread of disease and abnormal condition of all or part of the body or system or organs, which makes the body incapable of carrying on its normal functions. Tuberculocidal disinfectants prove to kill the bacteria that causes tuberculosis in addition to the pathogens destroyed through the use of hospital disinfectants. Again, tuberculosis is a disease caused by bacteria that's transmitted through coughing or sneezing. It's not transmitted on surfaces. So some of these products can be harmful to salon tools and equipment, and they may require special methods of disposal. You can't just dump them down the drain. So state regulatory agencies, they exist to protect salon professionals and their clients' health and safety while they receive salon services. State regulatory agencies include licensing agencies, state boards of cosmetology, commissions and health departments, and regulatory agencies require that everyone working in a salon or spa follow specific procedures. So laws and rules, there's a difference between the two. So what's the difference? Laws are written by federal and state legislature. They determine the scope of practice, what each license holder is allowed to do, and establishes guidelines for regulatory agencies to make rules. Rules are also called regulations, and they are more specific than laws. They determine how the law will be applied, and rules establish specific standards of conduct and can be changed and updated frequently. So, salon professionals' responsibility. Being a salon professional is a great responsibility because we want to be able to perform services without causing injury or infection, and we are to prevent the spread of infection and to know the proper procedures and follow them at all times, and prevention begins with us. Infection control is the methods used to eliminate or reduce the transmission of infectious organisms. There are 4 types of potentially harmful organisms: bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. So, infectious diseases are caused by pathogenic, which are harmful organisms that enter the body. They may spread from one person to another. Salon tools must be properly cleaned and disinfected to ensure safety for you and your clients. To clean, again, is a mechanical process of scrubbing with soap and water or some type of detergent. And disinfection is a chemical process that destroys most, but not necessarily all. And then disinfectants used in salon must be bactericidal, capable of destroying bacteria, virucidal, destroy viruses, and fungicidal, capable of destroying fungi. So, bacteria are minute one-cell microorganisms. They can exist almost anywhere. 1,500 rod-shaped bacteria will fit on the head of a pin. Some are harmful and some are harmless. They can exist anywhere on the skin, water, air, decayed matter, environmental surfaces, body secretions, on clothing, even under the free edge of our nails. And they are so small that they can only be seen with a microscope. So we have non-pathogenic bacteria. These are helpful or harmless that perform useful functions such as decomposing refuse and improving soil fertility. They help metabolize food, protect against microorganisms, and stimulate our immune response. And pathogenic are harmful, and they produce disease, and they invade plant or animal tissues. A lot of our immune system is located in our gut, and we have to have a balance of that good and bad bacteria. So some classifications of pathogenic bacteria. We have cocci, which is the round-shaped bacteria that appears singularly or in groups. Staphylococcus, which is pus-forming bacteria that grows in clusters like grapes, and it can cause abscesses, pustules, and boils. Streptococcus is a pus-forming bacteria arranged in curved lines resembling a long string of beads, and this causes infections such as strep throat and blood poisoning. Blood poisoning being when that strep or that staph gets into your blood system, and it can cause organ failure. So Diplococcus is a spherical bacteria that grows in pairs and causes disease such as pneumonia. Bacilli are short, rod-shaped bacteria. They are the most common and produce diseases such as tetanus, typhoid, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. Sporilla are spiral or corkscrew-shaped bacteria, and these are divided into subgroups. Treponema pallidum causes syphilis, which we know is an STD, and Borrelia burgdorferi, which causes Lyme disease. And forgive me if some of my pronunciations are off. So different bacteria move in different ways. The motility is what is used to describe self-movement. Cocces rarely show motility, and bacilli and sporilla use slender hair-like extensions, flagella or cilia, for locomotion. So cilia are much shorter than flagella and require many more to create movement. Both flagella and cilia move cells. They have a different motion. Flagella move in a snake-like motion, and cilia move in a rowing-like motion. So the life cycle of bacteria consists of two distinct phases. We have the active stage and then the inactive or spore forming stage. Active is when the bacteria is capable of forming a spore to protect itself, so to withstand an environmental incompatible with its existence. During the active stage, bacteria thrive in warm, moist, dark, and dirty environments. It can only take about 20 to 60 minutes for a bacteria to reach full growth. They then divide into two new cells through a method called binary fission, and the new cells are called daughter cells. So inactive or spore forming, this stage is where a bacteria is capable of forming a spore to protect itself to withstand an unfavorable environment. And the bacterial spore has the ability of certain types of bacteria to form a hard keratin coating that will protect it from the environment until conditions are more favorable for it to grow and reproduce. So bacterial infections occur when body tissues are invaded by disease-causing or pathogenic bacteria. Inflammation is a condition in which the body reacts to injury, irritation, or infection. An inflammation is characterized by redness, heat, swelling, and pain. And then pus, that is the presence of potential, or excuse me, it is a sign of infection. And it's a fluid byproduct of the infectious process, contains white blood cells, dead cells, and bacteria, where your white blood cells have gone and trying to fight the invaders. So local infection. This is an infection that is confined to a single area, such as a pimple, boil, or infected cut. It appears as a lesion containing pus, and the pus containing bacteria, white blood cells, and dead cells, and Staphylococcus is the most common pus-forming bacteria. A systemic infection, these infections affect a larger portion of the body. The infection is distributed throughout the body. It is widespread and not localized. Staphylococcus, the most common human bacteria, it can be picked up on doorknobs, countertops, by handshaking contaminated implements. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, commonly referred to as MRSA, initially appears as a skin infection presenting as a pimple, rash, or boil, and it can be difficult to cure. Without proper treatment, it can become systemic and can have devastating consequences that result in death. That's blood poisoning. It gets into your blood and can cause organ failure. And it's very difficult to treat. It's very antibiotic resistant. So viruses are parasitic submicroscopic particles that infect cells of biological organisms and are capable of taking over the host cell's reproductive function. They are capable of infecting all plants, animals, and bacteria. They can pass through the pores of a porcelain filter, and viruses cause common colds and other respiratory infections and gastrointestinal infections. And I know with what we're dealing with now as a nation, we're all probably pretty familiar with viruses. So they are parasitic. Some other viruses include measles, mumps, chickenpox, smallpox, rabies, yellow fever, polio, influenza, AIDS. These are not affected by antibiotics. In fact, it's hard to kill without harming the body's own cells. When available, vaccinations prevent viruses from growing in the body. So biofilms are colonies of microorganisms that adhere to environmental surfaces as well as the human body. They secrete a sticky protective coating that cements them together. It's hard to penetrate. Biofilms are hard to pierce with antiseptics, antimicrobials, and disinfection. It keeps the body in a chronic inflammatory state that is painful and will inhibit healing. So bloodborne pathogens is something we as cosmetologists need to be concerned with. These are disease-causing microorganisms that are carried in the body by the blood or body fluids, such as hepatitis and HIV. The spread of bloodborne pathogens is possible through hair cutting, chemical burns, shaving, nipping, clipping, and broken skin. So we need to make sure that we are operating in a safe manner that does not result in a blood exposure. Sometimes, here it mentions facial treatments, waxing, tweezing, or whenever the skin is broken. Even the barbers that do the shaving and what have you. You have to be prepared to protect your client and yourself from blood exposure. You have to assume that everyone is infectious. And you protect yourself by using your PPE, your mask and your gloves, and wearing sleeve protective clothing and closed-toed shoes. So hepatitis is a bloodborne virus that causes disease and can damage the liver, and there are 3 types that are of a concern in the Salon, and that is hepatitis A, we have hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. So human immune deficiency virus is the virus that causes acquired immune deficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS. It breaks down the body's immune system. HIV is spread from person to person through blood and less often through other body fluids. And the HIV virus is spread mainly through the sharing of needles by IV drug users and unprotected sexual contact. So less commonly, HIV is spread through accidents with needles in a healthcare setting. Activities that are not methods for transmitting disease are holding hands, hugging, kissing, sharing food, or sharing household items, such as a telephone or a toilet seat. So fungi are single-cell organisms that grow in irregular masses. This includes molds, mildews, and yeast, and they can produce contagious disease such as ringworm, which is not actually a worm. It's a fungus. Folliculitis Barbae. This is also known as pseudo-Folliculitis Barbae, is an inflammation of hair follicles caused by a bacterial infection, often caused by Staphylococcus aureus, the good old staph. When we shower, we remove thousands of staph bacteria from our bodies. It's why it's important that we practice good hygiene and shower on a regular basis. Outside of healthcare, this is often referred to as barber's itch or hot tub folliculitis. So Tinea barbae, this is a superficial fungal infection caused by a variety of dermatophytes that commonly affect the skin, primarily limited to bearded areas, face, neck, and around the scalp. Then we have Tinea capitis, cap, think head. So this is fungal infection of the scalp, characterized by red papules or spots at the opening of the hair follicles. And then Tinea pedis, think pedicure or pedius, is ringworm fungus of the foot. So parasites are organisms that grow, feed, and shelter on or in another organism, known as the host, while contributing nothing to the survival of that organism. They have to have a host to survive. Parasites can live on or inside of humans and animals. They can also be found in foods, plants, trees, and in water. Humans can acquire internal parasites by eating fish or meat that has not been properly cooked. External parasites that affect humans on or in the skin include ticks, fleas, and mites. Head lice is a type of parasite responsible for contagious disease and conditions. One condition caused by an infestation of head lice is called Diculosis capitis. So again, remember cap, head lice. Scabies is also a contagious skin disease. It's caused by itch mite, which burrows under the skin. It's a contagious disease and it's caused by parasites and should only be treated by a doctor. Immunity, this is the ability of the body to fight off or resist infections and disease and to destroy bacteria that have entered the body. Natural immunity, this is inborn ability, and acquired immunity develops after overcoming disease or through inoculation, getting those vaccines. So proper infection control can prevent the spread of disease caused by exposure to potentially infectious materials on an item's surface. So proper infection requires 2 steps. We must first clean. We have to remove any dirt, debris, skin cells, hair, nail clippings. Once we remove those, then the area is ready to be disinfected. You cannot disinfect a dirty surface. So we have to do the scrubbing and the wiping and the cleaning, that mechanical process, and then follow behind it with our EPA registered disinfectant. So sterilization, this process destroys all microbial life. This is a third step that can be incorporated, but it's very rarely mandated in our scope of practice. This would be in the healthcare setting, it is mandated. So decontamination, removal of blood and all potentially infectious materials on an item's surface, removal of visible debris or residues such as dust, hair, and skin. What is dust? Dust is dead skin cells mainly. That's why you need to dust your home. Those are skin cells off of you and others. So the process destroys all microbial life. Again, it's the third step. Effective sterilization typically requires use of an autoclave to complete. That incorporates heat and pressure. For sterilization to be effective, items must be cleaned prior in the autoclave, and it must be tested and maintained per the manufacturer's specifications. And decontamination is removal of all blood and other potential infectious materials on an item's surface, removal of visible debris, such as dust, hair, and skin. So cleaning, again, this is when we remove all the visible dirt and debris from tools, implements, equipment by washing with liquid soap and or a detergent, using a clean and disinfected nail brush to scrub any grooved or hinged portions of this item. The vast majority of contaminants and pathogens can be removed from the surface of the tools and implements through proper cleaning. A surface must be properly cleaned, again, before it can be properly disinfected. An example would be metal nail implements, your nippers, your clippers. You know, those persons, their nails, skin cells, any dirt and debris that may have been under the nails, you know, that sticks to that tool. And in order for it to be properly disinfected, that has to be scrubbed away, has to be rinsed, it has to be dried thoroughly. And then Georgia requires that we do a 10-minute immersion in a liquid disinfectant, which I'm sure some of y'all remember the jars with the blue liquid on stylist and barber stations. That is a immersion disinfectant, and it has to stay in there for the time stated by the manufacturer in order to have efficacy, meaning that it's effective, and then it's taken out, it's rinsed, and allowed to dry. So there are 3 ways to clean your tools. Again, we're going to wash them with hot soapy water, scrub them. We could use an ultrasonic unit, and we can use a cleaning solvent on metal bits and electric files. So always look at your manufacturer's directions for how you should clean and disinfect that tool, because some of them may have directions that differ from just the norm. So the process of disinfection eliminates most but not all microorganisms on non-porous surfaces. The process is not effective against bacterial spores, extremely effective in the salon for controlling microorganisms on the surface, such as shears, nippers, and other multi-use tools and equipment like we just talked about. Disinfectants are not for use on human skin, hair, or nails. Never use disinfectants as hand cleaners since they can cause irritation and allergy. It is a carcinogenic. Liquid disinfectants are carcinogenic. I have seen in my career 1 or 2 think that it was a good idea to wash their hands in barbicide. And our skin does have a degree of absorption, and it's not the 1 or 2 times, it's years of exposure that can cause adverse effects on our body. So that's why we have to regularly use our PPE and protect ourselves if we want to have longevity in this business. So contact time, again, is very important. Again, in order for the product to have the correct efficacy, it has to be in or it has to be immersed amount of time, or it has to remain on the surface that amount of time in order for the product to be able to do its job. So proper use of disinfectants. We should always wear gloves. Again, that's our PPE. We can use disinfectant on pre-cleaned, non-porous surfaces. We can dilute according to the directions. You have to mix it to the proper ratio of product to water. You don't want to mix it too strong. It can corrode your tools. If you mix it too weak, it's not going to be effective. We have to use the appropriate contact time. If it says 10 minutes, then you need to leave it for 10 minutes. Spray can't be used if immersion is required. So spraying your nail nippers with an EPA spray registered disinfectant is not doing the job. And again, EPA registered disinfectants must be used in petty spas. And they are supposed to in these nail salons, and we'll go deeper into this during summer when we do our nail portion. They're supposed to run disinfectant through those jetted tubs after every client, not just spray and wipe. And even when they spray and wipe, first of all, is the product they're using effective? Second of all, are they leaving it the amount of time for it to even disinfect the surface? And the answer is usually no, they're not. Disinfectant tips. We should only use on pre-cleaned, hard, non-porous surfaces. We should always wear gloves and safety glasses when handling disinfectant solutions. We should dilute according to the directions on the product label, and we should maintain the recommended time for submersion. And these can vary from brand to brand because there's barbicide, marvicide, citricide, and other brands out there. So we always read our manufacturer's directions. To disinfect large surfaces, we would apply the disinfectant onto a pre-cleaned surface, or we could use a spray. Complete immersion means the entire implement must be immersed in the solution. We must change the disinfectant solution according to the instructions on the label, or more often if we see debris floating in the disinfectant, then it's time to mix up a new batch. Proper disinfection of a whirlpool, pipeless, or air jet pedicure spa requires the disinfecting solution to circulate for 10 minutes unless the product label specifies otherwise. So quaternary ammonium compounds, also known as quats, these contain anti-rust ingredients. One of the reasons you shouldn't leave your tools in the immersion for too long, again, because it can cause rust or corrosion and can damage your tools, and some of them are not cheap. Phenolic disinfectants can be harmful to the environment. We do not pour them down the drain. They can damage rubber and plastic, cause metal to rust, and we should avoid contact with our skin. With any liquid immersion, we should avoid contact with our skin. We can either use tongs to remove the item from the immersion tub, or we can use gloved hands. Household bleach is 5.25% sodium hypochlorite, and that is an effective disinfectant. We can use it to disinfect large surfaces such as countertops and floors. Using too much bleach can damage some metals and plastics, so make sure we read the label. Bleach can be corrosive to metals and plastics. It can cause skin irritation and eye damage, and bleach should never be mixed with ammonia. It creates a gas that can burn your lungs when inhaled. Bleach should not be used to disinfect salon, spa tools, and implements such as shears and combs and brushes. And again, we want to protect our skin and our eyes. And we want to make sure we don't inhale too much if it happens to have a strong odor. So disinfectants are pesticides, and they can cause serious skin and eye damage. Some disinfectants appear clear, while others, especially the phenolic disinfectants, are a little cloudy. So we should always use caution when handling them. So we want to keep safety data sheets on hand, and they are electronically available. You can search for one. We're going to wear gloves and safety glasses when we're mixing disinfectants. We're going to avoid skin and eye contact. We're going to add disinfectant to water, not water to disinfectant. We don't want it splashing up into our face. So we draw the water first, and then we pour in the measurement of the disinfectant. Again, we're going to use tongs, gloves, and a draining basket, and we're going to keep this away from children. So we want to carefully measure our products to make sure that they are effective, and we're going to follow our manufacturer's instructions to do so. We're going to replace our solution every day, if not more, if we see debris openly floating inside the solution. We're not going to allow the disinfectant to come in contact with our skin, and we're not going to ever place it in an unmarked container. That's how accidents happen, when somebody doesn't pay attention or know what's in that particular container. An example of what happened to me was, I thought I was picking up my water bottle, and I had some alcohol in a spray bottle, and shame on me, I had not labeled my bottle, and I sprayed alcohol in a woman's hair thinking I was wetting it with water. And I immediately rinsed her. She was fine, but it did stain her t-shirt, which she got quite upset about, and I had to offer to replace the t-shirt. So always label. And again, I'm guilty, and I had to learn the hard way. So multi-use items, these are things that are reusable and can be cleaned, and of course single-use or disposable, they can only be used once. And we would keep a logbook of when we're disinfecting our petty spas especially. Emery boards, orange wood sticks, buffers are examples of single use. You know, those hard, spongy, porous things that they scrub your foot with in these nail shops, those are made for single use only. They cannot get everybody's debris out of the pores in that spongy square block. And now they're taking somebody else's dead skin and whatever else they're carrying, and they're passing it from person to person. So that would be an example of single use only. So state rules require that all multi-use tools and implements must be cleaned and disinfected before and after every service, even when they are used on the same person. We want to mix disinfectants according to the directions, and we're always going to add the disinfectant to the water, not the water to the disinfectant. We don't want to have it splashing up in our face. So you need multiples of combs and clips and things, you know, your clipper guards if you're doing a clipper haircut. Those need to be cleaned and disinfected before you move on to the next client. So you will need to allot time in between to make sure you're disinfecting correctly. So electrical tools and equipment, these have contact points that can't be immersed in liquid. An example would be clippers and trimmers. So they have spray disinfectants you can use. They also have an immersion one where you can turn it on. It's a little jar of disinfectant, and you just barely dip the blade below the surface. You don't want to go too deep. You don't want it getting up into your motor, and that disinfectant can vibrate and clean and disinfect those clipper guards, because that's how the guys get the barber's itch, the folliculitis. You know, that can be passed from dirty clippers. So we want to disinfect our work surfaces before every client and after every client. So we're going to clean and disinfect any surface that a customer's skin may have touched, doorknobs, handles, to reduce the daily transferring of germs to your hands. And we know today that's even more important than ever. So we're going to have clean towels, linens, and capes that must be used for each client. You can use paper neck strips or towels underneath the capes to avoid it coming into contact with their skin. They have to be properly laundered. You're going to launder according to the direction on the item's label. Make sure the items are thoroughly dry. We have to store our linens in covered or closed containers. We can use disposable towels, especially in the restrooms. We do not allow the capes to touch the client's skin. If it's touched, it has to be laundered. And again, there are disposable neck strips or towels that we can use. All equipment that contains water for pedicures must be cleaned and disinfected after every pedicure. The information must be entered into a logbook. Some state regulatory agencies allow single-use tub liners in the petty equipment. So there are whirlpool foot spas, air jets, pipeless, and non-whirlpool basins or tubs. So the air jet's just going to use a blower to force air through small holes in the air channel that creates that bubbling, massaging effect. The whirlpool or pipe foot spa has come under scrutiny because disease-causing microorganisms tend to grow inside the pipes, despite the disinfecting process, and therefore have been slowly discontinued in the industry. And then, you know, the whirlpool creates a massaging effect by recirculating water through pipes and jets, similar to a jacuzzi tub. So the problem is all these oils and potions and everything that we use during a pedicure, it builds up inside those jets, and the bacteria starts growing. And if that client has any kind of scratch or, you know, a little bit of a scrape or anything that those bacteria can enter, it can really cause problems. There have been women that have died from infections. There have been amputations that have had to happen. So it is serious business. Non-whirlpool foot basins or tubs don't circulate water. It's just connected to running water in a drain, and they may be portable. I think these are the best option. You don't have to be concerned with making sure you clean those jets. They're just surface only. So chelating soaps or detergents break down stubborn films and remove the residue of pedicures, such as scrubs, salts, and masks. So they break down that film, and that can cling to the surface and inside those jets. So it prohibits the growth of the bad stuff. These cannot be replaced. These cannot be used to replace EPA registered disinfectant solutions. Be wary of chloramine T, as it is not an effective disinfectant for equipment. So the dispensary, this is where all the products, the color and the bleach and developers and everything are kept. And we always mix our products in the dispensary. We never mix them on the counter in front of a client. You know what, if you accidentally flip some into their eye or their nose or what have you. So it's just not professional. That's not what you need to do. That has to be done in that separate area. It's to be kept clean and orderly, and contents of all containers are clearly marked. Always store products according to the manufacturer's instructions, away from heat and out of sunlight. Keep the SDSs for all products used in the salon in a convenient central location for the employees. And again, this can be in an electronic format. So it's very important that we practice hand washing before and after each client. We need to make sure that we spend that 20 seconds singing happy birthday, and that we're going under our nails and getting in between our fingers, that we're removing as much of the germs and bacteria as we can. And we should do this again before and after. And we can use a moisturizing hand lotion after washing. You're going to probably have stock in hand lotion because we spend so much time with our hands in water. So waterless hand sanitizers, these are chemical germicides formulated for use on the skin. These are registered and regulated by the FDA. They can be drying on the skin, and they are not to replace hand washing. The soap that breaks down the biofilm and the scrubbing friction removes more germs from ordinary hand washing than using a hand sanitizer. So don't do this in place of hand washing. It's just when you cannot get to a sink or have availability to wash your hands. So follow standard precautions to protect you and your clients. There's guidelines that are published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's not impossible, because it may not be possible to identify clients with infectious diseases. Strict infection control practices should be used on all clients. In most instances, clients who are affected with Hep B or other bloodborne pathogens may be asymptomatic, meaning they don't show any signs of being ill or infected. PPE, this is an acronym for personal protective equipment, specialized clothing or equipment worn by an employee for protection against a hazard. For example, gloves, mask, eyewear, sleeved smock or jacket to protect your arms. Closed-toed shoes in the salon environment are to be worn. So an exposure incident, this is when you come in contact with blood or body fluid, and it can be contact with non-intact broken skin, blood, body fluid, or other potentially infectious materials that is the result of a performance of an employee's duties. Should you or the client suffer a cut or abrasion during a bleed or during a service that bleeds, follow the correct procedure to handle the incident. And we do have a blood exposure protocol that we will follow, and it's listed here. Of course, if the nature is severe, we would ask a salon employee to assist you. You're going to wash the injury with soap and water when appropriate, apply pressure to stop the bleeding, cleanse the area with antiseptic. We're going to apply a bandage, put on gloves, and remove any implements that may have been contaminated. Place them in a dirty container, and if the surfaces were contaminated, we would spray and wipe them down, and we would discard all single-use objects. put on a new pair of gloves, and return to the service. Now, if you cut yourself and your hand's bleeding, the first thing you're going to do is put a glove over that injured hand. Because while you're trying to attend to your cut, you don't need your blood dripping everywhere. So put a glove over the injured hand, get out your antiseptic, your bandages, your gauze, whatever else you need to attend to it. Then follow through with cleaning the cut with your antiseptic, properly bandaging, and then we would dispose of the trash and the bloody glove, in a little sandwich bag, and put it in another bag. We're going to double bag it, and then we would dispose of it. Once you have bandaged your hand, you are going to put on another clean glove while you continue with the service. If you cut the client, you have to attend to the client's cut in the same manner, but you're going to put your gloves on to protect yourself from exposure to the client's blood. Fortunately, I think cuts are far and few between. We're going to cut ourselves more than we cut the client. You have to be really careful around the ears. They will bleed and bleed and bleed. And, sometimes the clippers will pinch a client. So you should always have a little first aid kit on hand and be ready to attend to a blood exposure, whether it be for your client or yourself. And then if you cut the client, you got to work on smoothing it over. And hopefully they'll come back again. They realize it was just an accident. But it does happen. So we want to make sure we keep floors and workstations dust-free. This is one of the things State Board will look for. They come in a salon. So it is important that you clean surfaces. Product shelving, you should not have product up there that's dusty because it's been around a while. That needs to be kept clean. Trash has to be in covered waste receptacles to reduce chemical odors or fires. The fans and the ventilation system and humidifiers have to be clean. We want to keep our work areas well lit. We're going to clean and disinfect the restroom. We have to provide toilet tissue, paper towels, liquid soap, properly disinfected soft nail brushes, and a container for used nail brushes in the restroom if you're doing nail services. And we are never going to place food in the same refrigerator if we use it to store salon products. I don't remember knowing of any salon products that we stored in the refrigerator. But that's just kind of an outline. We'll be going, as you come in on your lab days, we'll be going through cleaning and disinfecting procedures because the big part of State Board cosmetology is to prevent you from spreading disease or injuring a client. That is one of their biggest responsibilities, and they take it very seriously, and they enforce it by fining you. They will get in your wallet if you are not following the guidelines.